Hello everyone, welcome back to the RotoViz Best Ball Show. My name is Colm Kelly. I am joined, as you can see, by my co-host here, Zachary Krueger. We're delighted to be joined today by Michael Leone of Establish the Run, Director of Analytics over with Establish the Run. We're looking forward to drafting. We were just talking before we started about the good fortune that myself and Zach, and then myself and individual drafts have had with kind of picks every single time 105 and upwards. So Mike has said that his luck has not been quite as hot. So we're seeing where we land here today. We'll find out our draft slot pretty soon when we jump in. But Mike, welcome back to the show. Obviously, you have a lot going on with Establish the Run at the moment. You've got the draft kit out and you're crushing it with Gretch, obviously one of our favorite guys over at Establish the Edge on the podcast side too. So how's things going as we really get into the weeds here as training camps have kind of really started to kick off?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I actually just got back couple of days ago from a trip out in Denver, Colorado, seeing some of the ETR guys in person, stayed at Levitan's house. That was a really nice trip. And now we're in grind season, heading into August, getting ready for the season. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for, kind of the higher stakes drafts to start in August. I'm excited for the season to start for DFS. So it's going to be a fun next couple of months.
It's going to be fun, but it's going to get hectic. It feels like just the dam is about to break here with, there's the trickles of news coming out over the last couple of days. And you're like, yeah, let's just not get too excited about that. But in a couple of days here, it's going to be fast and furious. And you mentioned the drafts, the high stakes drafts, really cannot wait. I've been dipping my toes in over at the FFPC as well. So it's getting to that exciting stage where we're going to be going very, very fast and furious. You mentioned you were over at Levitan's house. I seen some videos were circulating on social media, sinking. It was a collage of three-point just sinking baskets. So that looked like a pretty fun time over there. So yeah, Establish the Hoops is the way we'll be looking here for this show. But Zach, we were talking earlier today. I'm heading over to Washington in 2 weeks' time, and then we're doing the road trip up to the Fantasy Football Expo. So that should be pretty fun. We're looking forward to that. But how are you as we start off this Tuesday live stream?
Doing good. Nothing to complain. A lot of work coming in over the next couple of days. As Leone kind of mentioned, getting ready for the season. It's about to get pretty hectic. I've got housework to do to get ready for you, Colm. I've got to get the place cleaned up a little bit since we're hosting you for an evening before we head out to the expo. I want to make sure that our place is put together nicely for our humble guests. So other than that, just ready for the season to get started and looking forward to the expo as well.
Yeah, I don't really believe a word of that. I can't believe that Zach is specially cleaning an area as the house for me coming. Don't put yourself out too much, Zach. I did a tweet. I don't even know if Mike's seen this before we started. I had to get my hands in the dirt before we started this stream today.
I did see it. I liked it.
Was out mowing my lawn. So yeah, I'm this is not a made up bit. This is legitimate. I cut my own grass, get my hands in the dirt. So yeah, fun.
You're not a fraud like Silva. You actually do mow your own lawn.
Unless that could be, I could be like, I could have staged those photos, and maybe in 3 years' time it'll come out that this was all a ruse as well. But we are ready to draft. We're going to draft in the BBM3. Obviously, we were also joking before the draft started or before the stream started that the Pomeranian filled up in a pretty quick time. We had talked about that possibly being here. That was long gone before we ever had a chance to do it. If you are drafting over at Underdog Fantasy, if you use the code RotoViz, you can get yourself a 100% sign-up bonus up to $100. Once again, that code is RotoViz. If you're playing in something like the BBM3, that's going to get you 4 free entries if you think about it that way. But we are ready, Zach. What spot have we got here?
Hey, we did all right. We got the 104.
Okay.
Friend of the site, Davis Maddock actually has the 101. So that's
freaking Davis.
Davis,
I'm in
here.
FFPC Pros versus Joe's with him, and he had the number 1 pick there too. So the influencer 101 for Davis.
I will say I do think it is. Yeah, I do think it is a case that when the more drafts you do, probably over time it's going to balance out. But when you're on the good run or on the bad run, it feels like it's never going to end. I know last year Ben Gretch and Sean Siegel, when they were doing their main event drafts, I think they were just at the 109 every single time. So there was no luck going their way. So we have the 104. We'll keep an eye as how things go throughout. But you are the guest, Mike, here today. Which direction do you want to go in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, I play I guess it just really depends. Like I'll play it off the cuff. I don't have a set direction going into any one draft. I think 104 here, especially with Davis taking McCaffrey. I'm assuming someone's going to take JT, so probably fire it up with a high-end wide receiver here.
Jonathan, I was going to say I would make a deal with you if Taylor lasted to 4. I would agree to take him. So we have a start of McCaffrey, Kupp, and Taylor. So the options are kind of Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I'm not really tempted to go with any other running backs here. Who do you prefer, the way to Chase or Jefferson?
Yeah, I like Jefferson. I just think the volume's a little bit better than Chase. He doesn't have T. Higgins to compete with. Like, I'm not overly concerned about that, but when you're talking, tiebreaker here at the 4th pick overall, Jefferson's such a stud, and it seems like Minnesota's going to throw it a bit more this year.
And part of that as well is, I love Jamar Chase, but if you can, and I was talking to you, Mike, before Sean was making fun of me this past week when I was saying about my good fortune of getting AJ Brown and T. Higgins at the 2-3 turn a lot. If you do get, it's easier to go Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins than it is to go Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in those builds, but you can stack both of them up. There's no real harm there either. When you're getting into that second round, who are some of your favorite targets? The other question I was going to have for you at this point was week 17 stacks. How much influence are you putting on those in these drafts? Are you really emphasizing them, or are you kind of taking them as they come?
I kind of do it like Peter Overset does, which is keep your options open. You don't have to force the stacks early. You just, you draft as smart as you can the beginning of the draft, and generally the latter half of the draft, when the ADP value doesn't matter quite as much, you're going to have, so many different options to zig to a stack without really reaching a whole ton on a guy. So I'm kind of in the middle, I guess. It's boring. Usually I'm #never middle, but I'm kind of in the middle on the week 17 correlation stuff, where I'm definitely not gunning for it to the extent that I think some people are, where they go into a draft and that's like the top thing on their mind. But I do think it's more important than the people that sort of just wave it and think it's, ridiculously unpredictable.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way really with it. I'm doing it where possible, but not to the extent that I'm trying to force it. And I've mentioned this in a couple of the streams in the podcasts, where I'm trying to do it, like you said, at the later values. And a lot of my stacks they're the ugly stacks. They're the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets. They're the ones that aren't that appetizing. We also got a question in from Bollock wondering how did we get Steph Curry on the live stream and in relation to those 3-pointers that you were swishing. So yeah, I think I've mentioned this on the show recently. My daughter is 4.5 years old. She got a basketball hoop, and I go out some days, but yeah, even with a small ball, I'm not able to air them out quite like Mike Leone is here. Zach, what's your basketball skills like?
The beauty of having an editing team is you only see the makes.
Yeah, that's actually true. I was ready to give Leone a lot of credit there. I was like, it was very impressive. I'm sure the rate was still relatively high in terms of shooting percentage.
Days of footage.
Yeah, my basketball acumen back in the day, it was definitely okay. But as I've gotten older and sadly less physically active in those terms, my skills. It's really funny when you realize how, when you're younger, you think you can just not do something for a long time. You can just step in and do it, and that is definitely not the case now. My basketball skills are kind of embarrassing. I kind of lean my shoulder in, drop the fade back, in your eye about 10 feet from the hoop, and that's about it. I don't have the range I used to have for sure.
I was kind of hoping Saquon would dip to us, but that dream is dead.
Yeah, that's the one problem with the early picks. Saquon's ADP coming up over the last month or so, you're not getting him as much at the back end of that second round. And in turn, I haven't got a huge amount of shares off him. So we are one pick away. Who are some of your other favorite options here? The likes of Debo's available, Hill will be available. Then you're into the kind of Javonte Williams.
Yeah, so I actually like Mark Andrews quite a bit. Just grabbing that elite tight end, sort of being done with it. I think his ceiling's really high. I wouldn't be shocked if he overtook Kelsey this year. I mean, Kelsey's got the huge opportunity with Tyreek Hill gone, but otherwise, Andrews' upside I think is pretty significant with no Hollywood Brown and just the efficiency of that offense. I like Andrews.
All right, let's do it. We haven't drafted much Andrews on the stream, Zach, so I think that's a fun way to bring this build. That brings in that elite tight end that we're trying to get as well. The other option, I'd probably be looking there at Andrews or Debo. Higgins went 2 picks earlier than that. We'll see what comes around to us. There's a tier here, and I don't know if you feel the same way Mike, about this tier is I tend to, when we get to AJ Brown, I'm going with Mike Williams over Keenan Allen, and then probably still taking Pittman over him. Obviously, DJ Moore has taken a big jump in ADP, but I haven't really drafted much Keenan Allen at all this year. Are you kind of ranking them in a similar order or different?
We have Keenan a little bit ahead. I seem like every tiebreaker goes against Keenan Allen for me. And it's something we've talked a lot about with ETR on the back end in our ranks, which is like, are we sure our Keenan Allen rank is okay? And ultimately, I feel like our projection that's kind of firing our ranking on the back end is somewhat conservative. And I know it's not the ideal archetype that you want, which is kind of a not explosive 30-year-old wide receiver that's really, really target and volume dependent. But I mean, he's just racking up 150 targets a year, and this offense is so great. I kind of like DJ Moore the most of the receivers, sort of, from a field perspective.
If you want to do it, I'll take DJ Moore.
Would you prefer Moore over Williams here?
I don't mind. I'll go with the guests on the tiebreak.
I prefer Moore over Williams, but I think it's like the same tier for me in half PPR and in best ball. I think Mike Williams probably has like a few more spike weeks, but I do think there's going to be a year where DJ Moore just scores like 8 to 9 touchdowns instead of the 4 that he's been pounding out every season.
At some point over his like 15-year career, it's bound to happen at one. But like that's been the dream all along. And how much though his ADP has kind of jumped, half around to around at least over the last month with the Baker Mayfield news. Do you see Mayfield as a massive step up? I find I'm a little bit indifferent in terms of I don't know if it's worth that, but his profile as a wide receiver is somebody who we've drafted year on year since he came into the NFL. So usually I'm going with Mike Williams there, but I have no problem going DJ Moore. But how do you feel about the quarterback switch there?
I mean, I think it's a positive. I don't know if it's a huge positive, but to me, it's kind of a free roll. Like his quarterback play really hasn't been good, and I don't think it can get any worse with Baker. And if we get a healthy Baker, I mean, even if you look at the stats for Baker last season, broken down like pre and post injury, obviously the schedule was more favorable pre-injury, so it's hard to completely parse that out. But I do still think there's some upside for Baker, and Moore's opportunity is so great. It is tough, full PPR, like FFPC type main event. I think I would go DJ Moore over Mike Williams, but in the best ball, being able to use the Mike Williams spike weeks and the half PPR, I do think it's pretty close between those two. I do think the Chargers offense is just still, I don't know if I'd say undervalued because these prices are huge, but there's just gonna be so much opportunity given to these players because they're going to run at such an up tempo offense, and they're going to have a positive pass rate over expectation.
Man, DJ Moore has had a bad run of quarterbacks when we look at it from the start of his time in the NFL. I would say, in my opinion, like in terms of the probably like outside of Keenan Allen as actual NFL receivers, I think he's probably the most talented that goes in this range, but just wish we could get that quarterback play. I probably would feel better with him at the back end of the third round. But yeah, willing to take him there. This is a team that is going to be a bit more unique to what I've got over the last month or so. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. And I really like all the players. That's not a knock on it. There is some teams, Zach, that we have drafted that have been unique, not for the right reasons, but this one hopefully is unique for the right reasons.
Make sure you push back on me a little bit. Don't just cater to my preferences here.
As long as you draft Devin Singletary, I'll let you pick any other player you want throughout the draft.
How early are you
Colm,
taking?
so we push back on. We push back on Colm, and then it's really me and the guests who kind of get in sync. It's you want him?
That's really
sure. We take him. Yeah.
I like it.
You'll find when it's a pick that I don't want, I'll be like, you'll probably see by my face and my silence that it's not a player that I want. But these two guys are all guys that I like. So we've gone DJ Moore. Then Josh Allen was the first quarterback off the board. We get Nick Chubb, Michael Pittman, Kyle Pitts, then James Conner, Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, Alvin Kamara, Marquise Brown. So we're about 6 picks away. It is going to be interesting to see what does happen with Kamara. The news kind of is that it might be next season. It feels like if it's next season that there is some values at the 312 they're picking him up. How are you feeling about that situation? Have you drafted him much this year? I haven't a single Alvin Kamara share at this point.
Yeah, we've been kind of aggressive targeting Kamara in round 3, like end of round 3, if you get him at all in round 4. I just think the reward's worth the risk, where if there's no suspension, I mean, it's a huge profit. And if there is a suspension, if it's 4 to 6 games, you're still not totally dead, especially in a tournament like Best Ball Mania 3, where you get him towards the end of the season. And you also might thin that needle where he misses enough games that the advance rate on Kamara is not great, which you don't love, but that also could make him a little bit more unique in the playoff stages.
That all seems very fair. So we are into a situation where Breece Hall went in the last pick. Then we get Deontay Johnson. We're on the clock here. Some of the options are Allen Robinson, Jerry Jeudy, Cam Akers. Then we get into the quarterbacks really at this point. I've been drafting DK Metcalf quite a bit. Jerry Jeudy's probably the other player to be top of my board. Who do you fancy here? We could pivot to.
I like Jeudy quite a bit. I think the ceiling on him is really high. I think the Denver guys are tough to figure, but one of those guys at their ADP is just going to have, a really, really high advance rate, I feel like.
I find it a little bit like they're obviously going very close together, but there is a little bit of a gap. And I'm probably just going to, what I've done the last couple of seasons is whichever one is the least costly. I've been taking kind of in that situation. And this year at the moment, that seems to be Jeudy, but it's going to be fun over the coming 3 to 4 weeks with camp to see how these things change. That's kind of almost a round difference between him and Sutton there in terms of picks. George Kittle goes next. Throw up the targets and tell us, Zach, who your favorite target is here at the 5th 04 here.
Well, I'm hesitant to say too much because I never know who's
Right.
who's tuning in and just looking to take some of our guys. I had T. Higgins at the top of the queue a while back. He went. I mean, not that was a bad pick, but he went nonetheless when he was sitting at the top. Assuming that this guy here doesn't take Lamar Jackson, I'd almost be partial to Jackson just to stack him with Andrews and get that out of the way. We got
that'll be fun, yeah. 3
different receivers. We got Andrews here. I'd be on Lamar. I don't know where Leone is leaning here.
100%. I think that's I'm in on taking an elite quarterback. I like taking an elite quarterback in this range to begin with, just because I feel like the mid-tier quarterbacks are almost more overdrafted than these quarterbacks, especially in a tournament setting where having an elite onesie, I think, is pretty important at all the positions. So I'm right with Zach. I mean, to get that with the correlation, I think he's like, even just in a vacuum, I think he's a decent value here with the correlation. To me, it's a no-brainer. I would have honestly looked at Cam Akers. How do you guys feel about Akers this year? I've been a little weary. I haven't drafted him too much, but round 5 seems like about the right time to maybe take a gamble.
Go ahead, Colm. I'll go.
I was going to say, go ahead, Zach. But I like Akers. He's fallen in this range where I could hear. I think you audibly groaned, Mike, when Breece Hall went off the board. He's kind of the guy in that range that I'm targeting if I'm going to go running back. Cam Akers will be a close second behind him. He just goes off the board there 3 picks after us. I feel with the tiebreaker, like you mentioned, with Mark Andrews, I would have been tempted to go with Jackson even at that previous pick with Jeudy. So for him to come back to us was really nice there. And you mentioned getting that elite quarterback. We have an elite tight end now. We have 3 wide receivers. It kind of gives us some flexibility here as we move forward. But if you are looking to move into running back, I find the Breece Hall, Cam Akers kind of tier very interesting. You have some other options in there as well, but he is dropping a little bit with the injury concerns. And J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne used to be in that tier. In this draft, he goes a full round and a half ahead of that. So, and Dobbins does just go off the board with that next pick. So they are kind of the guys that I'm willing to take that pivot for, technically in the dead zone. But, if you're doing a 0 RB build at that point and you decide that they are good values, I'd be willing to go that way. How are you feeling about it, Zach?
My concern with Cam Akers, and please by all means correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm also going to attempt to recall a conversation I had with Sean about it earlier, but my concern with Cam Akers is that the coming back from the Achilles injury has not always proven to be a good thing immediately. I think there's a lot of people caught up in how impressive it was that Akers came back and made that late season and postseason run with the Rams post Achilles injury. But when I was talking to Sean about it, I think he had told me that generally players coming back from that injury tend to show better recovery and production the year afterwards. And we're still only a year removed now from the Cam Akers injury. So that has kind of made me weary at his price. Maybe I'm the fish in the room and that's I'm gonna have to pay for it. But I've not been drafting a lot of him. I'm just kind of concerned that it's just not going to work out. And he's one of those guys who I've decided I'm willing to be wrong on and hope that the other guys I'm taking in place of him will perform at least as good, if not better.
The thing I think with his injury that was so surprising is how quick he came back, whether that is good in the long term or not.
Yeah,
But it could be a case that like just he has recovered extremely well, and if he was able to be active on the roster and take snaps, even though it was kind of limited in that time back, the team obviously had cleared him. They're not doing that with an asset unless they think that he's actually, able to play. So I would have to imagine that like he may be, I always give the example of Adrian Peterson when people talk about ACLs and how quick somebody can come back from them. Being a Packers fan, David Bakhtiari still hasn't got back to the Packers, 2 years later. But when we look at the Peterson example, maybe Cam Akers is the modern medical marvel with that particular injury. We'll see how it plays out. We can hear lots of size. What was the size? And
I'm just stunned that the guy who took Hurts took Alan Lazard in round 6. I think he could have taken Devonta Smith, and
he made that little 16 pick reach on Alan Lazard that you got to make whenever the time is right.
When you could have stacked, you could have stacked Devonta Smith. I was just surprised, to each their own, but not where I would have gone. It was a tough stretch of picks for us though. We got up fast.
Well, we got a pick here, and I think it should be Devonta Smith. But
I like Devonta Smith. I like Devonta Smith. I like Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Mitchell's okay, but I think I'd rather wait. Drake London seems okay. There's a few guys here, but I'm cool with Devonta Smith. Colm, if you like Devonta Smith.
I think looking at the wide receivers going in this range, I have him over all. Like after that, Drake London's probably the target, and there's a bit of a tier break. Then you get into the Michael Thomas, Christian Kirk, Hunter Renfrow territory. So I think getting him and then potentially seeing if maybe Elijah Mitchell could potentially fall back to us in the next round, but he doesn't. He goes, as I mentioned, that potential thought process. We'll see then how we roll through these next picks. How are you feeling? Tony Pollard goes off the board as well.
I'm devastated.
Yeah,
Tony Pollard gone. I'm wrecked.
I was wondering when I could hear the sigh, and I was like, what am I missing here? Is one of these guys the target that the guys want? Did they want Alan Lazard? And I'm kind of like, what's happening here? And then
even as a Packers homer, Colm doesn't want Alan Lazard there.
Yeah.
So a very non-RotoViz guy to take, but I do sort of think, Josh Jacobs is, if it's round 7, we don't have a running back. I think Josh Jacobs is fine. I'd probably take Jacobs or Miles Sanders here. Not that you absolutely have to get a running back, because you can still keep hitting up wide receiver, but I think we're at a point where there's a decent drop off.
Who instead? He just went.
Yeah,
I think I'd take Miles Sanders, but how do you guys feel about that? Or would you just keep hitting wide receiver?
We could go Brandon Ayuk. I think we'd skip another round here.
I've been drafting Sanders, so I'm kind of on board with the Sanders pick.
Well, don't take Russell Gage. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Take if you want.
It's 2-1 on Sanders. We're making Colm squirm.
That's right.
We're making him squirm.
Right. We got him once, and we still have 11 more rounds to do it. So let's try to get him one more time here. But I like Miles Sanders because and I'd like to get Leone's take on it too, but the whole Miles Sanders thing is I think that there's still going to be a pretty run-oriented offense. The fact that he scored 0 touchdowns last season, I think, is really kind of pressing down his value in terms of a lot of the ways that drafters are viewing him. And to get him in the 7th round on a run-heavy team, like it's probably not correct to say like maybe this is kind of similar to a Dobbins-Lamar situation on a run-heavy team, but I think Sanders is probably still going to get enough looks in high value areas of the field where if he gets in the end zone, he's probably making your lineup that week. So I like him here. And he even has a little bit of receiving upside to him as well. So I personally like Sanders.
I feel.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I feel somewhat neutral on Sanders overall. I know Silva's really high on Sanders, and I trust his stuff. He's had him ahead of ADP in his top 150. Jack Miller's been pretty into Miles Sanders as well. The big thing for me, just structurally, the 0 RB teams in best ball, I'm more likely to detour from wide receiver a little earlier just because the best ball component, like the way the scoring works, I think you can run into maybe a little bit of overkill if you keep going at wide receiver. Whereas in a managed league, that doesn't happen because you're going to have to pick who you start. So you want to take like 6-7 wide receivers to just get a chance that you get 4 that are auto starts each week. So for me, that's one of the things like I think I've picked up on. Even in a 0 RB build, I'm more likely to detour a little bit earlier in best ball, just using the best ball scoring to my advantage.
Yeah, usually at this point, I think usually my detour is one round later in round 8, but it's fair. I think Sanders at that point is a value. My problem with Sanders, Jacobs, and I would put Antonio Gibson into this as well, is they feel to me to be the last bits of that potential dead zone. And I just have some concerns. The one in that backfield that I've been drafting is Kenneth Gainwell. So I haven't much Sanders, but Sanders,
I like them both.
Yeah. If Sanders beats out Gainwell, I'm not going to be surprised, but I'm going to target it at the lower cost. And to be honest, it's mainly been the wide receivers and the quarterback that I've been drafting in that offense for Philadelphia. So let's see. I think it's not a bad pick there, but it feels like it could be a little bit dead zone-y. So we'll see how it plays out. After that pick, though, it is a flat zone.
We're out of the dead zone, though. We could take a dead zone-ish pick in round 7.
We made it.
Come on, man. There's someone.
I just don't like running backs. We all know this.
Yeah.
There's someone I do like a decent bit coming back here.
Cool. Let's see if they make it back.
Say them out loud for all of our viewers. No.
We are in that range where, it's Christian Kirk, Russell Gage, Hunter Renfrow, Kadarius Toney, who I mentioned. Michael Thomas went just before that. It's a very flat zone, so I can see why the pivot is made there.
We've got the Philly New Orleans stack coming up too. So there's a couple of week 17 stack candidates that I think are near ADP that we can grab.
Ask if that was what you may have been eyeing up. At least one of those. So
the player, all joking aside, that we would normally go for there if we didn't have Mark Andrews would have probably been Dalton Schultz or TJ Hawkinson. I think at that point where we take Miles Sanders is normally the range, but we're into an interesting point, and it's not a pick that I'm completely against. So we're 2 picks away. We'll see who it plays out here. There might be a long silence here as we.
Yeah, I'm not pulling it up here. We've run pretty smoothly here so far, so I'm going to wait and just flip this here now and hope that who we want is here. I've got one guy in the queue. I got Chris Olave in there.
Yeah, I think we should take Olave. Go Philly, New Orleans here.
Yeah, we've already got 2 Philly, so why not?
I think it's it's close to the top pick by ADP too, and I'm a value guy. I really pick it towards ADP, especially in these big contests. I'm trying to run into trying to just run into a monster team. So I think Olave makes a ton of sense, and then. Honestly, even coming back
after this site, no more talking. We don't want any more talking at this point. We did get a comment on no 15 to 17 opponent correlations.
Oh, baby, they're coming. They're coming. That's why I said you got to be patient. They're coming.
Don't force them. So we'll see how it plays out here over the next couple of picks. Zach, is there anyone in your mind that's an interesting pick in this range?
Well, certainly you have Devin Singletary. I think he's more of an interesting fade than he is an interesting pick. No, I mean, Devin Singletary certainly kind of meets what we need in terms of another running back goes. I'd be more prone to fade.
He's a running back.
I don't think we have a stack here with him. Chase Claypool, I think, is interesting with Baltimore.
Yeah, Claypool. I think we get 2 stacks. We get him around ADP. And again, this is some of the flexibility. We take Sanders in 7, but we come back with 2 correlated receivers that I think are exciting wide receivers, even though they're a little bit lower pegged than Ayuk.
Yeah.
You okay with Claypool, Colm?
It's 2 to
no,
1, baby.
He's not. Silence. 2 to 1. We just keep
on voting him. 2 to 1.
Dude, Claypool in round 9. Dude, Claypool in the hundreds is a good pick, man. I mean, so. The quarterback play. I like taking advantage of these situations where there's a bit more uncertainty because of a quarterback switch. Ben Roethlisberger was so bad. Juju's out of town. I mean, I think Claypool was the clear pick there, especially with the correlation tiebreaker.
I think too. I'm not big on fading wide receivers because of underwhelming quarterback play. I think you have to have a limit, but I don't think it's something that I'm necessarily bearing too heavily in mind. I think kind of the other maybe twist on the whole quarterback thing is if the Steelers' offense isn't great, I don't think their defense is particularly good either. If there reaches a point where they're down by a couple, 2 possessions at halftime or early in the third quarter, something like that, they're going to have to throw him by osmosis. These wide receivers, regardless of who their quarterback is going to have to find ways to get targets and get fed in order to keep pace with some of these games. So even if their offense isn't necessarily stellar, I don't love their defense enough where I think it's going to be all these close games if they're not putting up points, and there's going to reach a point where they're just going to have to be throwing to try to win games and keep going. So I think some of these later Steelers guys are values. I'm taking Deontay Johnson too. I'm high on him. I think he just vacuums up targets. So I'm by no means out on Steelers receivers, despite the fact that we don't necessarily know who their quarterback is, whether it's Trubisky or Tiny Hands Pickett. I'm in on them. I think I'm kind of lockstep with you, Leone. I think that there's kind of a value to have, at these spots where the public is maybe fading these talented players a little bit because of the quarterback uncertainty.
Would you have gone Singletary, Colm?
He's gone.
You have gone Singletary.
Would you have gone? I mean, legitimately, is that what you would have done? Would you have gone Singletary, or what would you have done?
Yeah, 100%. But there's no doubt. I don't have a I need you guys to filter me when it comes to like not drafting Singletary, because my exposure is too high, and this is the only time where I'm drafting and not getting them. The question that did come in just when we're on Singletary is the situation with him and obviously James Cook. They do go within 3 picks of each other here in this draft. What's your thoughts on the split there? I'm willing to draft either of those guys. For example, if James Cook made it back to us in the 10th, I'd be willing to take James Cook. I just think that backfield is going to eventually score more touchdowns than they have in the past. A bit like the Miles Sanders argument that Zach mentioned. Being a Buffalo fan, how are you feeling about the backfield split there?
Yeah, I mean, Cook, I'm having a tough time getting a grasp on because I don't know what the true upside is. Is he going to catch 2 to 3 balls a game and get like 5 carries, and it's just impossible to hit upside if that's your workload? But you start catching 5 balls a game and maybe an 8 to 10 carries with some big plays on a good offense, you can hit it. And it's been really difficult to discern. I like Singletary a bit more just because we know there's at least a chance he's a true workhorse because we saw it in the playoffs. We saw it at the end of this season. But it's tough. I like the guy. I like this Q right now that we got. I think Kenneth Walker right now.
It's 11. It's almost a full round. It's almost a full round.
Yeah. Kenneth Walker is perfect for this team, I think.
Yeah.
What you guys?
Oh, I'm in. Yep, Kenneth Walker.
You're in. All right, cool.
No silence on this pick.
This draft, I feel like, it's turned out pretty well. I like this draft. I think it's going pretty well. The one question we could have done last round is maybe taking Trey Lance at value, even though we already had Lamar. Like Lance had fallen a decent bit.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that.
The picks that went on us there that could have been interesting. We had an option there at Fields, potentially that pick. Tyler Boyd went, but based on the wide receivers we have, my 2v2 at that point, if we had the option for Tyler Boyd, would have been Boyd and Singletary versus Claypool and Ken Walker. But I'm very much on the Seahawks backfield, like I talked about the Bills, where we're switching on them. We are back on the clock pretty rapidly. Where are we?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as into Rojo. I think I like Spiller a bit more, but I'm pretty neutral on this pick. Whatever you guys, if you guys have a strong preference here. Irv Smith's cool.
Do we have to go running back here? Yeah.
No, do we want our?
No, Rondell's good too.
Yeah,
maybe
Rondell.
Let's go Rondell.
Let's go Rondell. Can he do it? He does.
He gets it in. He gets it in.
I'm just weeks ago, which was like those millisecond. Yeah, we're probably going to have to go and target our running backs here for a couple of rounds. But yeah, Rondell and that break for me. There's another tier break after him. When we're looking down through the other options, we could have potentially went there. I believe Landry was available, which could have fit into the. But we obviously
I saw that.
Yeah, but we'll see how it plays out. I think we're in a position at the moment where we could have went with running back there, and that would have left us probably more balanced at this point. But I think Rondell was the right way to go. If you had a strong feeling on Rojo, I think I would have went that way. But again, trying to pivot off some of the exposures that we already have, I think there'll be a couple of running back options that do come back to us, and we're probably going to have to deal with some other rookie running backs to fill in. But I know we kind of ran out of time because we got back, so that was a quick turnaround on those picks. But Penny and Walker, I'm kind of doing quite similar there that I'm doing with Singletary and Cook, and it's usually that I'm targeting the veteran out of the two, and then if the other one comes back to me, I think the gap in ADP at the moment is quite interesting as well on the Seahawks running back. So we'll see how that plays out, but probably drafting them in different formats at multiple different times. So the picks, Ronald Jones and Isaiah Spiller, go off back to back. We'll see how it works out here as we come back here into this range. We will want to try and get a second quarterback, but at this point it might turn into a 3 quarterback build for us with the way things are playing out. Have you any other quarterbacks of interest that you're trying to target?
I mean, I've been targeting Daniel Jones pretty heavily, but I mean, we have no correlation whatsoever with that. Not that we absolutely have to have it, but But I mean, we don't really have.
I've been pretty in on Mac Jones, and we can't even. That would force us to do a 3-quarterback build though, because the same bye weeks with Lamar and the Patriots.
There's a good question here from Hunter. Do you usually only draft 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends? I try where possible to go with that way, but in this particular build where we've kind of let quarterback roll a little bit, and depending on which second tight end we get, that's really what's going to determine it. So trying to get a second quarterback usually before round 12, and usually the second tight end is probably going to be in that range as well, but in this build it could be a little bit different. Do you use kind of the same where you're trying to go 2 and 2, or?
Yeah, I try. If I get, especially, I mean, we took 2 onesie positions in the first 5 rounds. It's hard to do that and then go 3 and 3, like, because part of the edge in doing that is that you don't have to allocate those roster spots. The one nice thing, I think, at wide receiver, I'm generally drafting a ton of wide receivers, but I mean, we can probably get away with 8 on this team, the way it shipped out, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close to maxing out the wide receivers at this particular point. Casey points out that Davis is really hammering the Denver KC stack for his build out of the 101 here.
Yeah, Davis just likes to make teams that he can be like, oh, look at this week 17 stack. And then, his team's going to suck and it doesn't matter. So.
I do have one player who I'm targeting here. It would be a little bit of a reach. It would also be a guy who works out for us. My other concern, too, is I think Davis, he only has 1 quarterback, and then we have another guy who's sitting there with Fields and Tua. He's going to need a third. So assuming that these next 2 people aren't listening to us, I'd be leaning Jameis Winston here, just to get
that stack,
to get the Seattle stack. It'd be a reach by about 11 picks, but we're not going to get him back if we pass on either of these 2 spots here. So let me pull this up.
True up the queue.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking
we also have Baker as a backdoor single stack, but it's not the full game stack.
That's true.
I kind of like Hines. I like Hines.
You like Hines?
Running back. Yeah, I think he's got like good contingent value and like decent standalone value. I'm not opposed to just grabbing the quarterback though and being kind of done with, I don't know. Oh, you know who we should have. Fuck.
I know what you're going to say.
We should have taken Albert. Oh,
yeah, he's 100%. He was the other player that I thought he might take. I have one other target.
No, Davis is going to take him.
Yeah, I have one other target at tight end though. If that doesn't,
Davis is doing cartwheels right now that we didn't take out.
No, well, I
should have done it just for the snipe value.
I was going to bring that up as the other option, because with that stack Albert O's there, going to be interesting to see if he does take him with the dosage positive news, that we're hearing, particularly from Pat Corain. Most of that positive news comes from Pat Corain, but
yeah,
we'll see how it goes here.
He took him. All right.
Yeah, he was 100% going to take him, but
Hunter Henry over Gesicki. I'm on Gesicki.
I've been kind of high on Hunter Henry, actually.
Yeah.
So some of the way that the Patriots played last year with pretty low in pass rate, not overly aggressive. I think that there's a potential if the Patriots kind of up things a little bit in year 2 with Mac Jones. Hunter Henry was still very solid despite the fact that they weren't overly aggressive. I like his upside. Where do we want to go here, though?
I kind of think I'd go Gesicki and be done at tight end, and it's the round after ADP.
All right. Let's
yeah,
do that.
My pick at that point, the other tight end I would have went if Gesicki had went is Everett, but when you have the gap in ADP there, I don't think it's justified to take Everett at that particular point. So I think,
and then we kind of just. Sorry, Colm, go ahead.
I was going to say Gesicki, Everett for me, I would be comfortable enough going with a 2 tight end build. But the question earlier about the 2 tight ends, or I was talking about 3 tight end builds. I think taking your tight end there gives you flexibility to take 2 shots on a quarterback should we need to here in these preceding 5 rounds. So that's nice to get Gesicki at that point. It is interesting from draft to draft just to see how some players fall just for absolutely no reason. But Gesicki there seems like a smart pick.
I think we've got Jameis or Baker as options in 14, 15. I think the tiebreaker definitely goes to Jameis with a bit more correlation and the ADP being in his favor. So hopefully I think there's a chance it makes it back. I don't know. I haven't drafted much Jameis. We've been a little bit low on the Saints passing game.
0%.
This is the spot. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that if he can make it back here, it's interesting as well. See Deshaun Watson goes off the board in the 13th round. But it's a bit like, you mentioned with the Alan Lazard pick. We do see like draft to draft some crazy things happening in certain selections, certain picks, and go and get your guys. That's what I'd be saying. Go and draft those guys nice and early for us. But give us a run through the full team so far, Zach. Let us know what we should be doing here in the last couple of picks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to keep the draft board up here, but we got Lamar Jackson, quarterback, running backs, Miles Sanders, Ken Walker, Nyheim Hines, also doing very nice. None of those guys have the same bye week, so that's a little added bonus in my opinion. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Chase Claypool, Rondale Moore, and then tight ends, Mark Andrews and Mike Gesicki. So overall, I like it. I'll be interested to see, as Leone said, whether or not Winston falls. There's not anybody who I don't think anyone really has a reason to take him in terms of a stack goes, unless the team with Landry want him on the bring back. They actually only have one quarterback, so the Landry team could potentially pull Jameis in this next round. The team with Michael Thomas has two top tier quarterbacks in Stafford and Herbert, so we won't have to worry about that if we were to pass on him coming around here. But if we don't get Jameis here, I don't know that we necessarily need to reach on Baker just yet.
Agreed.
His ADP is at 196, so I'd like to think that we can safely pass on him for another round. My question would be, looking at this as I ready up the queue that only has two quarterbacks in it, is where do we want to go next? Because there are a couple running backs who I think are interesting, and in my opinion, the running back pool has even dried up a bit. Just to go over some names, we got Algier, Edwards, Gainwell, Khalil Herbert as the top four currently sitting there, with Gainwell going off the board. So Algier would be the one I'd want if he'd make it back to us, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen because he's at the top of the board.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to go running back. We probably have room for one more wide receiver, and I don't mind waiting till it becomes someone that's a bit more obvious and getting a couple more running backs under our belt. I do feel like we have for a zero RB team, we have a pretty solid start at running back though. So I feel pretty.
Leone, are you drafting McKissick at all? Given that you like Nyheim Hines, because they kind of are obviously similar backs in terms of the roles that they play. They're more pass catchers, not going to get a whole lot of run between the tackles. Is McKissick another guy you're on as well, in the same way you are Hines?
Yeah, I mean, I'll draft anyone at the right price. That's kind of the type of drafter I am. But yeah, I'll draft McKissick. I think we have what's interesting about our team is we're like actually somewhat okay though, as far as, quote unquote usable weeks out of the gate. So I probably would lean to someone with a bit more pure upside, but we're probably taking, at least two more running backs. So we have probably some room to take, maybe a pure handcuff gamble, and then someone like McKissick has more of a stable role.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Marlon Mack is a guy who could be up here with us if we were interested in him. And then as Colm knows, later on, there is a possibility of Brian Robinson, who I draft, not because I think he's good, but because I think that there's a potential that he falls into at some point in time, the early down grinder role, which could prove profitable. And then I think if Gibson were to ever miss time, I think Robinson becomes an easy goal line back there.
Yeah, Brian Robinson is basically the version of Devin Singletary for Zach, but I cannot stop him drafting him.
I was just going to say Gus Edwards was someone that I think is okay too, especially if we're betting on Baltimore offense, but he goes. So that is a moot point. There's also Jerick McKinnon to tilt Davis. There's always some equity in tilting Davis.
Do we want Winston now that he's made it back to us?
Hit us with the running back queue just quickly, Zach. I don't know if he'll pinch McKinnon this early. Let's take Winston here.
Yeah. I think Winston passed ADP with a
full round
big game stack. I mean, I'm not into Winston, but if there's ever a time to draft him, it's around past ADP on a stack, and I do. We probably we could even draft Baker late. This could be a 3 quarterback build, but I don't mind completely betting on Lamar here and then just having that Winston stack.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm pretty happy with that. And one of the nicest scenarios is when I think Zach, you first brought Jameis up 2 rounds ago.
I put him up a while ago. I thought we were going to have to actually reach on him by about 10 picks. Instead, we got him at a 13 pick value. So good on us.
And McKinnon's definitely something that I'd be willing to target here. So if it is a case that he is passed over by Davis, which has been the case.
McKinnon could make it back.
I think we could probably get him on the way back the next time. How do you feel about that, Mike?
I think we could get McKinnon on the way back. I mean, I'm again ADP value hound. I don't mind just taking Khalil Herbert here, but I don't have any. Honestly, I don't have any strong picks. I'm kind of just peppering running back at this point and sort of diversifying. So if you guys have strong leans here,
you look like Zach, the full queue.
This is it.
Like the other options outside of running back.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it'd just be receiver.
There's probably an option if we wanted to get into the Steelers again, but I think that Herbert or Marlon Mack might be the right way to go here.
We don't have a lot of Herbert. I would probably go
for the other option if we don't want to go. If we want to avoid Brian Robinson later.
Well, we don't want to do that. We definitely don't want to avoid Brian Robinson.
I'm fine with. I would have been fine with Pickens too if we wanted to be done at wide receiver, but
Herbert was the pick.
So how do we feel so far through this roster, particularly at running back? I think we're obviously going to be pleased with our wide receivers, tight ends, and I'm not a Jameis guy, but getting them to pair up with Lamar Jackson's a nice spot. Running backs, we have Nyheim Hines, Ken Walker, Khalil Herbert, and Miles Sanders. I think we're in a pretty solid position where we can still go whichever direction we want throughout the rest of the draft. We have 3 picks left. I'm feeling like it's a 2 quarterback, 2 tight end build unless something exceptional happens here for us over these last 3 rounds, which, as I mentioned earlier, didn't really look like the situation around the 10th round of the draft. So yeah, things have played out pretty nicely from that perspective. So we're kind of a little bit of flexibility here, but we're leaning probably more so to the running back position. My dream pick, and people are probably obviously listening in while drafting with us, so ignore this. This is all false information, but Jerick McKinnon is the pick I want to get back to us here.
I think
I'm on board.
Yeah, and also too, Leone mentioned snipe equity earlier on. If there was really to be snipe equity to be had, it wouldn't be Richie on McKinnon with the 172nd overall pick. It would be sniping him with the 189th pick. Just a couple spots before Davis.
Yes.
And pulling him that way. So if we're really trying to capitalize on the snipe equity, the fade of McKinnon is a correct move from an ADP standpoint, but then also from snipe equity, I think it really just kind of blends perfectly. So I'm on board with that. I think he'll probably make it back to us unless we got another McKinnon truther in here. So why not go for McKinnon? My question too, just looking at this build, our wide receivers are pretty loaded. I mean, we can go with the 8 wide receiver. I'm not against that, but we could also kind of take shots on a few more running backs here and go with the 2-7-7-2 build. Our 7th wide receiver is currently Rondale Moore. I don't know if that's something we want to entertain. Maybe we see what our next couple backs look like, but it's not a build I do a lot of. I tend to have a couple more wide receivers and running backs, but guys like Nyheim Hines, even Khalil Herbert currently as 2 of our 4 running backs kind of make me feel like maybe we should get a little bit more overweight on running backs to close this thing out.
Yeah, and Landry, get to a point in Landry in a minute. You mentioned our wide receivers look pretty good. That's what'll happen when you take 7 of them through 11 picks.
This
is where I think the Sanders pick was like okay because you still end up pretty good at wide receiver with the best ball scoring.
We'll see. We did get a question or a note in from James Kenny saying Landry could have been a great stack with a Landry.
Yeah.
Obviously when we get Winston, but I still think it's pretty close actually, but I think I still pick Rondale Moore there. In hindsight, would you swap Rondale out for Landry? I think then what happens in that situation is if we take Landry in the 11th round, we're probably taking Winston at the high Nyheim Hines or Mike Gesicki pick, which obviously affects the build then later on.
So in our rankings, we have Rondale a full 2 rounds ahead of Jarvis Landry. We've got Landry. We're behind ADP on Landry though, and we're ahead of ADP on Rondale. So, I mean, I probably go Rondale. I'm generally not reaching 2 rounds for this stack. I'm reaching more of a round. There was no way for us to know that we would get Jameis, around past ADP at the time. I guess if I could straight up swap them now, it'd be really, really close. I think that's like right on the border to get the double stack and the game stack. But
yeah, no, I would agree with that. But I think I do think sometimes in hindsight you can be like, yeah, that would work right there. But then we're also saying like we would have forced our pick to get Winston, and I don't want to be pushing Winston in as a necessity into the roster. So I think the way it worked out here is fine.
Yeah.
Another thing too that I kind of consider with some of these stacks is I've really kind of tried to be more conscious lately of the late round wide receiver stack, and if there's a team that I'm liking a lot of potential late round wide receiver stacks, it's the Saints. I think Deontay Hardy could have kind of that random splash week. We don't know what Michael Thomas is going to look like. Maybe Callaway ends up being a valuable player down the stretch. If we already have Olave, which we do, I kind of like taking that late shot on one of those guys to triple up. Do we want to go McKinnon here then? Do this night?
Yeah, I think we should go McKinnon. I do like Wandale if he came back as our 8th wide receiver, but
all right.
Nice. That played out nice. To hold off and then for him still to come back. He is somebody who is a prime target for me in pretty much all drafts. It's no surprise that a lot more of my drafts have less running backs in those early picks than that have them. So he is somebody that I'm trying to fit in there. So nice to get him after waiting it through.
Yeah, I knew Davis would take Wandale.
There's going to be crossover in these picks. There's always it's inevitable.
Marlon Mack, if he falls to us, is probably almost as gross as it sounds to say about a player like Marlon Mack. He's probably almost a smash at this point in time if he actually fell to us here. 24 spots.
I'm a little worried on Mack. I mean, I'd be fine taking it past ADP, but I mean, I almost think like Rex Burkhead is the same as Marlon Mack. No one's drafting Rex Burkhead. Just looking at, their the contract situation, what those guys can do, and I think Burkhead is more a pass catching role. But
we also have Brian Robinson, JD McKissick.
What do we want I gave my spiel, but I'm fine. I don't have Mack, and this makes sense past ADP. What do you think, Colm?
I probably would go Mack here.
That's fine.
As gross as it
is.
No, that's fine. Show us the rest of the running backs before you click it quickly. We're not going to get them. Scroll hour.
Let me just do this here.
Yeah, I mean,
the only other one I would have
considered that I would look to get at this point, Sony Michel, but
I probably would have actually been very open to Chris Evans over Marlon Mack if he would have fallen to us, but he went just before us, so we wouldn't have had him on the table.
Yeah, myself and Zach are obviously sharing some of these draft boards after we finish up, but Sony Michel, Chris Evans, they're kind of the main targets along with Eno at the back end here of these drafts. It is a situation where the Texans could be really bad. Marlon Mack could have zero value, but it's actually funny that Zach mentioned it earlier in the show today, talking with Sean a number of different times and looking at, potential options in this late round. Marlon Mack is now into that second season recovered from the Achilles tear, which puts him into that potential situation where we see Devontae Foreman getting back to strength. So it's a gross situation, but I think for a zero RB build, those kind of guaranteed early season touches may be valuable. We did also get a question in to say it wouldn't be a live stream without Leone mentioned usable weeks. So I think we will get a couple of usable weeks from Marlon Mack as well. But yeah, how do we feel? So at this point, run through the full roster for us, Zach, and then we'll get Leone's thoughts on the last round pick. I think there's probably going to be some super high upside guys here at the back end.
Yeah, so we're currently staring a 2-6-7-2 build right in the face. We got Lamar Jackson, James Winston quarterback, running backs Miles Sanders, Ken Walker, Nyheim Hines, Khalil Herbert, Jerick McKinnon, Marlon Mack, wide receivers Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Chase Claypool, Rondale Moore, and then tight ends Mark Andrews and Mike Gesicki. These late rounds have been honestly a lot of fun to kind of take shots on. I've really tried to get a little bit different with my last couple of picks and just hammer some guys who I really like. Do we want to go another running back here, or do we want to kind of pack it in there and maybe go wide receiver? Who's standing out to you, Leone, who you think is probably still available?
I think I'd go wide receiver. Baker goes to. I think like Odell might make sense for our build where we probably don't need the receiver weeks early anyways. I do have I'm out on a limb on James Washington, but it looks like he went. Sometimes he's here in round 18.
Yeah, he's gone.
There's going to be multiple options for us here, Zach. So show us the queue, and we'll add some names just for fun. People are always looking for late round options. So I would add, just looking at our options here, I would add Sony Michel if we want to go running back. I'm just going to shout these names. We don't have to take them. He was in the queue.
Yeah, I like Dearness Johnson as a late running back too.
Michelle just went. Yeah, Dearness Johnson's a fun one. I've been throwing some Jeff Wilson in. I've been trying to get a little bit of Jeff Wilson. I like Hassan Haskins a lot.
Yeah.
For running back.
Donovan Peoples-Jones David Bell's on pup. I mean, the pup thing doesn't matter a ton right now, but he could be ahead. And if Watson doesn't get suspended, DPJ could definitely have some splash weeks.
I think it's interesting in this room. It looks like he'll go undrafted, but like Greg Dulcich, if you're looking for a 3 tight end build, would be very interesting. You've just added the other name I was going to say is the late round kind of flyer that I've been taking in a lot of these particular drafts. Just out of interest, where has Isaiah McKenzie gone in this draft?
It's got an ADP of 201. He went to.
I've been taking Dulcich and McBride a lot as tight end 3, where like I need a third tight end and I don't want to take some complete schmuck. Like I'd rather just grab a little bit of upside.
I do think that's another player that may be going to the team in the number 1 spot here at the end to Davis if we don't take him, because he took Alberto obviously. But I'm open to kind of any of the names in the queue.
Can you scroll down on our team again? Just on the side there. Sanders, Walker, Hines, Herbert. Can you go down to receiver? We got Jefferson. Man, I think I'd lean receiver, but it's pretty. I mean, this is a team where it's pretty open.
Snipe equity would have been. Oh, I was gonna say snipe equity might have been Taysom Hill here.
Oh yeah, Taysom would have been the snipe equity.
He just went. All right, who do we want here?
I'm okay with the 2 tight ends, and I think if I'm going real upside, I'm taking a shot on Tyquan Thornton if we're really going for it.
Leone?
Yeah, I'd probably go Odell here, but I'm fine with. I mean, Thornton, you get the little mini with Gesicki. I'm fine with either, so you can break the tie there.
Gosh.
I'm fine with. You don't have to defer to me. You don't have to cater to me.
Let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Don't do it. Oh my god.
I draft Tyquan
Why are you drafting?
Thornton.
He's going to be an injured reserve for the whole season. Like.
I draft Tyquan Thornton so much at the end of drafts just because Odell is there. Leone likes him. We're going to go with the guest out of respect.
I don't usually draft him, but I do think the free agent wide receiver. I mean, I would have much preferred Fuller. I do think the free agent wide receivers have some value. Generally, not taking. Oh God, get out of here. Generally not take. Like, I rarely take Odell, but if there's a team to take him on, it's a team like this where you've got 7 wide receivers that are all going into the season, knock on wood, healthy, and you're just hoping to get them at the tail end of the season for the playoff run.
The reason I asked about Isaiah McKenzie is I had a draft over the FFPC this week, a slow draft, and I got him at the last pick of the 20th round. Was the final selection on a team that was Bills Bengals stack, so that worked out pretty well when the news was coming out. We'll see how it plays out. But Zach, let us know the full team. I think it's pretty stacked here.
Yeah, I really like the way this one's shaped up. Lamar Jackson, Jameis Winston as our quarterbacks. We got Miles Sanders, Ken Walker, Nyheim Hines, Khalil Herbert, Jarrett McKinnon, Marlon Mack as our running backs. We got wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Chase Claypool, Rondale Moore, Odell Beckham, Colm's pick, but we took him nonetheless, and then Mark Andrews and Mike Gesicki. So I like this overall. I also like the couple times that I feel like we got just a tiny bit of value with a few of our picks. I think Ken Walker's a particular smash that stands out there for a pick. Even the Winston slide was rather nice. So always a good feeling when you can kind of get some of those guys that you want for your lineup and get them at a decent value. So I like this team.
How are you feeling, Leone, now that the dust has settled and we've taken some bad players at the end of the draft?
I feel pretty good. I mean, structurally, the team's pretty sound. We have correlation. We have ADP value. I mean, like all the systemic things you look for, I think makes sense. And then as far as individual players go, like a guy that I've dogged in dynasty drafts a ton, but to get Kenneth Walker around past his ADP, and his ADP's already fallen a lot, I think is just an absolute smash pick on a team that's set up like that. He's the rug that ties the room together for me.
That's one way to describe it. But I think we're into a pretty good build. I think it could.
No Lebowski fans? Huh?
No, I'm a Lebowski fan.
Okay.
That's before the generation before me. I'm only joking, but we did get some people looking for some sauce to be dropped on the team in the 101, which is obviously Davis's team. Leone, you feeling up to the challenge?
Gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather sauce the Alan Lazard teams, the easy pickings, but we can do Davis's team.
I like how we sauced teams one time when Overzet was on, and now people are like chiming in and asking us to sauce as well. That's pretty interesting pivot there. But here's Davis's team. I'll run through real quick. Patrick Mahomes, Daniel Jones, quarterbacks, Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard, Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running backs. Very high T team, I have to say. A.J. Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, Tim Patrick, Jacoby Myers, Sammy Watkins, Wan'Dale Robinson, Zay Jones, Braxton Berrios at wide receiver. And then at tight ends, he has Hunter Henry and Albert O. Leone, what do you got?
I mean, like, I feel like I get, if I were to draft someone like Sammy Watkins where Davis did, the internet wouldn't get enough of it. I mean, that's just absurd. Look at these receivers he's drafting. I mean, Braxton Berrios, have fun, Davis. Zay Jones, Braxton Berrios, Sammy Watkins, Jacoby Myers ahead of ADP by 7 picks. I mean, my God, he takes Hunter Henry over Gesicki. I think just poor form. A lot of dust for Davis.
I think there's some forced correlations maybe in there. Obviously, we did talk about that earlier, about getting Myers in there, getting Henry over Gesicki. I think there's a couple maybe that were picked out in that kind of format, but feels to me like it could have been a 3 tight end build, and I think we may have a couple of deads on.
It should have been it for sure should have been a 3 tight end build if we're being serious. I think the Pollard Gibson picks are odd in this structure. You've got CMC as the hero running back, and then you've got Javonte. Like, that is not a team where you want to be taking Pollard and Gibson, especially if you're planning on getting CH with the stack. I guess CH was probably a tack on that he didn't anticipate to go with the stack because he did get him around past ADP. But I think the Pollard Gibson turn is a pretty bad turn for the way the team was structured to take Pollard around ahead of ADP there. And I mean.
It's not fair on Davis catching strays here.
Sammy, Zay, and Berrios. I mean, come on. When your third wide receiver Sky Moore, you might need to do a little bit better than that when Sky Moore and Tim Patrick are 3 and 4.
I don't feel as bad now that you just wanted to take Odell Beckham when I see some of the wide receivers that ended up on this roster. But
I mean, Odell over Braxton Berrios. Come on. What are we doing here?
Hit us with the other. We'll do one other one, and it'll be the. Let's see how the.
We should sauce a team that wants it because Davis didn't ask for it to be sauced.
Sorry, Davis.
He just kind of caught a drive-by. Who else wants to be sauced? Is there anyone else who wants
Mike just wants to sauce the team that took Lazard.
Oh, Lazard.
I already kind of sauced. Let's sauce Chris Allen's team. We love you, Chris.
Quarterbacks: Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Leonard Fournette, A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt, Alexander Madison, J.D. McKissick at running back, Jamar Chase, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Christian Kirk, Tyler Boyd, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, Julio Jones at wide receiver, tight ends, Dawson Knox, Noah Fant, and Brevin Jordan. I'll go on record and say I don't completely hate this team. You might be playing with one quarterback for a good bit, but I guess he obviously knew that going in, and I see what he's trying to do there. So
I kind of like Dink was drafting a team where on FFPC best ball where he had Mahomes and Watson stuck around a real ton, and he took Watson in a 2 quarterback bill. Probably wouldn't have wanted to take Watson like 2 rounds ahead of ADP, but I do like it uniquely for the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament where if Allen has, a bad week in the playoffs, and there's probably not going to be very many Allen Watson teams, and Watson carries you, then you can get like a unique Allen team deeper in the playoffs in that final week 17. Structurally, this looks pretty good. Much better team than Davis's team. But I'm curious what you guys think at 3rd tight end. Would you have gone Brevin Jordan or taken a shot on McBride or Dulcich?
It's funny because myself and Sean have an ongoing bet in our drafts where I'm trying to happen to draft Brevin Jordan late, and it's just not happening. He keeps refusing to do so. But I think that the smarter pick when we get into that point is to go for one of the rookies. I think when you're at the FFPC where we've been doing those drafts, Jordan, like we're in a deeper draft where he is still there. but I'm trying to get the rookies much more often than Jordan. If I'm targeting the Jordan, the rookies are already gone. But I think overall that's a pretty solid team. There's a couple of guys on it that, you know, I'm not crazy about drafting. I haven't drafted Deshaun Watson very much, and I'm not drafting Leonard Fournette, and that could be a game.
I'm drafting Lenny. I know he's the like Lenny. If Lenny's, I mean, that he could be top 5 by the end of the season. 100%. He has a ceiling. He actually has a ceiling that a lot of guys don't have. Because he's a really interesting guy for me because he has a lot of knocks as far as the type of running back you don't want to draft early in terms of talent level, I guess, being the big one. That's questionable. But he also has a situation where he has that legitimately like really, really high ceiling. I mean, he might have the second highest ceiling after CMC as far as workload goes, because the high value touches in Tampa Bay are replicated basically nowhere else in the NFL.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when we look at, like, you know, he's not somebody that I'm going to be drafting, usually going in the late second round area, but he really, if you look at where he's playing, if you're looking at the offense, you're looking at what he did last year, he probably, like, for people who love drafting running backs, probably should be going higher than he is at the moment. Probably should be going, I'm never going to do this, but at the, you know, early second round range, you know, but it's something that I can't bring myself to do. And that is a joke, obviously. But I'm really drafting the wide receivers in that range that he's going in. But I think, it's probably going to come back to haunt me yet again this year as I continue to draft Rashad White. But I think overall it's a pretty solid team. The one pick I would have liked to get that he did take there was Tyler Boyd, but then it did give us the option to get Kenneth Walker. So we'll see how it plays out.
One guy I like on his team, but I haven't gotten much of because the price is AJ Dillon, where I'm like, I really see the upside, but I'm having a tough time. And he took Dillon a little bit past ADP. I mean, we have him ranked in the early 70s. So, but usually it just seems like he's gone, and his ADP's been moving up even in some other formats. And I can't get there in like the 5-6 turn quite yet.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard for both him and Aaron Jones to return value on their ADPs. Like, one of them is going to have to fail, I think, for them to have success. I do think if anything happened to Jones, I think if we're looking at the ADPs, I think Dillon would be an early second round running back, or, you know, probably just goes into where Jones is at the moment. But yeah, I think it's very hard. And you joked about it, Zach, on the show. I'm like, as a Packers fan, I tend not to draft a lot of Packers players. And obviously the low pace of play as well is going to be a bit of a concern there. But any other teams we want to head, or are we going to leave it and be nice and finish up there with that one?
I'm fine. I will say, just Leone brought up the question of tight ends with Brevin Jordan. One guy who I'm trying to maybe consider late when we're really taking these desperation tight end shots if we need a third tight end is Washington tight end John Bates. Logan Thomas is kind of up in there. John Bates I thought was kind of interesting. He caught 20 passes, over 200 yards and a touchdown as a rookie. If Logan Thomas for some reason misses time, he might have a little bit more upside than some of these other guys we're taking shots on, just given the fact that he's actually established doing a little bit of something when given an opportunity to. And it's not like we're asking much of these late round tight ends. So I think John Bates is also on the table as probably a late tight end that hasn't been drafted literally all year.
The other guy, just when we have a Buffalo guy on, Dawson Knox is somebody that I haven't. No, Dawson Knox is somebody that I haven't drafted at all this year. I think because, you know, he's going in a range where it feels like a tight end dead zone. What's your thoughts on Knox this year?
Yeah, I haven't drafted much Knox this year. I think my take on like Knox and like Zach Ertz and that range of tight ends is, I think they're probably ranked correctly positionally, but I'd rather, as far as like value overall, I think like Irv Smith, Gesicki, Albert O, like Hunter Henry, Fant, I think those guys are just all better values in a vacuum, and I'd just rather wait. So like I think they're fine in terms of their you know, positional order where they're going in drafts, but overall I think they're going too early when you can just get some better values later. I do think for FFPC late that OJ Howard is somewhat interesting, and, you know, kind of along Brevin Jordan. That's FFPC because it's a bigger draft, the tight end premium. I wouldn't do it in here, but I think he's got contingent value if Knox gets hurt. Like, he actually has some upside. I also wouldn't be shocked if the Bills played a lot more two tight end stuff than they have in the past. They haven't had a second pass catching tight end. there's already these rumors about Jamison Crowder's been missing practice and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's rolling with Isaiah McKenzie because of it. But I just wouldn't be stunned if maybe that turns into some 2 tight end sets where they can basically have the option to run or pass, and whatever the defense does, there'll be some sort of mismatch.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. We are going to get ready to wrap it up, but we did mention at the start, the draft guide will establish the run and obviously establish the edge with Ben Gretsch. Give you a second, Mike, to give it a little plug, and obviously follow Mike on Twitter at 2hats1mike, but let us know what you've got going on over the coming weeks.
Yeah, the Establish and Run draft kit is going strong. We've been releasing seasonal NFL props for that package. We also have rankings for tons of different formats, including Underdog Best Ball Mania 3. So check that out. And also on Establish the Edge, been grinding out the off-season's projection special I do with Ben Gretsch. We have 1 episode per division where we really dig into our projections, why they are the way they are, what that means as far as how you should draft, and more importantly, like where the errors could be in the projections, because we know there's a huge range of outcomes, and trying to look at how things might move if 1 or 2 things go a little bit differently than assumed.
That's awesome stuff. So again, on Twitter at 2hats1mike. Zach, what's going on? I know you're working on a couple of pieces that are coming out in the near future.
I am. I got my Washington Commanders team preview that's set to drop tomorrow over at NBC Sports Edge.
Brian Robinson propaganda will be.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's no wonder we're getting Brian Robinson propaganda.
It is, in fact, a 2-paragraph article on Brian Robinson. Everything else has been cast to the wind, but I've got that coming out. I also recently did an article on better and best ball wide receivers, where I kind of took a look at some of the work that Hayden Winks had done over at Underdog with his better and best ball points. And I applied that to a full PPR format. And I went ahead and looked at wide receivers last week. I'm hoping to run back that article with running backs either this week or the following. So a couple articles coming out, and it's go time. Training camp officially all underway today. So it's about time to get that content going.
Yeah, you mentioned better and best ball. Quick around the room, all-time legends and better and best ball. I think the first name comes to mind for me is always Deshaun Jackson.
I was just going to say him, yeah.
Any other names spring to mind, Leone?
What was that? Sorry, I lost focus for a second here. I guess
better than best ball, all-time names. I was in the Deshaun Jackson leads the list for me.
Better than best ball all time. I mean, Will Fuller was always.
Oh, he was pretty good in
everything, I guess.
Yeah. But
D-Jax is probably the ultimate, right?
Yeah, I think he's the reason that somebody was just so frustrated trying to decide when to start Deshaun Jackson. That is.
Oh. You know who else? I'm just thinking of a running back real quick, better in best ball. I'd be willing to bet that LeGarrette Blount probably hit in there once or twice. A guy who just saw a ridiculous touchdown volume at times, despite the fact that he was seldom put on the field. Last season with Detroit, 418 yards, 2.7 yards per carry, but 5 touchdowns. Like, if you were taking a super late shot on him, he probably made your lineup a couple times for no good reason at all.
Sliding in there. Obviously, as well, follow Zach on Twitter at ZK_FFB. We will be back with more podcasts, more streams. We have JJ Zacharyson on deck next week. Of course, check out the Best Ball podcast feed as well. Lots of content coming out there, including work with Connor O'Driscoll up there and myself and Zach. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at OverTimeIreland. And until we're back with another show, have a good one.